All right, I don't think there's any reason to have an opening or anything fancy here. Let's just get right into it. King of the Casuals, by the way, if you're happen to be got the notifications that we just had to come on and talk about, or I did, one of four of us, to talk about Saturday night. I'd rather talk about Robert Whitaker and the main event in the UFC, but I'm just looking at the this thread on Twitter. Daniel Cormier, who's a stand-up guy and a professional and a champion and a class act and super smart and understands mixed martial arts, understands boxing, understands wrestling. He gets it all. I mean, he's not a boxer, but he certainly understands boxing, whether it's in the octagon or the ring. Heavyweight champion, light heavyweight champion. What else do you want? And his tweet, I mean, the way he's talking about Jake Paul, by the way, the way this dude talked to T Wood, that's Tyron Woodley, in case you didn't know, in case you've been living somewhere else on another planet, makes my skin crawl. He makes everybody's skin crawl. All these kids are going to get taught a lesson, I swear. And I can't wait for it at J. Leon Love, which is, if you didn't see, he's the I don't know if he trains Jake Paul or he's just there to be a sycophant, kiss Jake Paul's ass, which is weird because when you look at them, well, I don't know the guy. It just seems like should be the other way around. That guy's, I don't know if he can box, but he's a big dude. Better respect dudes like T Woodley before he puts his hands on you. He ain't Ben. So that's what Daniel Cormier said, which, is he never talks shit, so he must have been annoyed. It takes a lot to annoy a guy like that. Jake Paul responds, "Gotta cook him up Cleveland style. Seriously." So here's the thing. Jake Paul fought this fight against Ben Askren at 190 pounds, I believe, something like that. Close enough. And he probably weighs 205 or 210. I don't know. Ben Askren fought in the UFC at 170. And he wasn't that big of a 170. So he fought a bloated Ben Askren who doesn't box, who boxed for 11 weeks exactly, trained for 11 weeks to take the fight. No excuses. He got knocked out. That's fine. But he's calling out Nate Diaz, who's also, by the way, at his heaviest 170. You just fought at 190, and I don't know how tall he is, Jake Paul, but he's I'll give him this. He looks, all of 200 pounds. You can't call out Conor McGregor, who fought at 145, is the 145, 155 champion and has won at 170. Granted, he hasn't fought like Kamaru Usman at 170, but whatever. He fought Nate Diaz at 170, beat Cowboy at 170. So that's as big as he can get. So Jake Paul, in order to fight Conor McGregor, which would be his wet dream, it'll never happen. He should probably be working as like a gardener on one of McGregor's estates, or maybe just on his boat, if he'd even be able to do that. This is what happens when we call this the Blue Bloods call people like Jake Paul new money. Oh, you must be new money. Anyway, I can't relate to any of it, but he acts like he just won, like a redneck that just won the lottery, and he sort of did. But I think I'd rather be poor than be a joke in a sense. Anyway, so and not a good person, but and he looks, whatever. I don't need to pick on him. It's like the Revenge of the Nerds got one guy that could fight, and suddenly they're all excited. But I would love to see Jake Paul fight Yoel Romero, who's his size. I think Nate Diaz, who's smaller than Jake Paul, would absolutely destroy him in boxing. I think Jorge Masvidal, who's fought at 155, who's much smaller than Jake Paul, but can actually box, would most likely have no problem with him. Even Conor McGregor, who's way smaller, I don't see Jake Paul being able to hit him, but who knows? But that's never going to happen. So let's throw McGregor out of the argument because that's like they're two different classes. Business class, Jake Paul, Conor McGregor is the shit. Anyway, he thinks he's going to fight Daniel Cormier, who's 260 pounds and would take his head off. Let's read some of these other tweets, though. Okay, they got 1.5 pay-per-view buys. I'd love to know who those 1.5... I was one of them, so I guess I'm slightly hypocritical. I watched one screen with the UFC on it, which I mostly watch, and then I wanted to see Askren, and it lasted a minute, so I didn't see much of it. I could hear Snoop Dogg, and so I turned off the sound, and it messed up Oscar De La Hoya, and I want to see Jake Paul fight, and he sparred here. This is my ADD. It's incredible. I'm just skipping all over the place. But part of that reason is because I'm as dumbfounded as Cormier is. Jake Paul, 1.3 million pay-per-view buys, $65 million generated. I wonder if he gets that $65 million. I don't think so. If he does, good for him. It doesn't matter, though. I still wouldn't trade places with him. Then he puts out a sparring video with Mike Perry, who's tough as nails and crazy. Dustin Poirier says, I want to see Jake Paul versus Mike Perry. Mike Perry fights at 170 as well, so he's smaller. He's only like 5'10". Then somebody says, Freddie Roach really... Oh, Jake Paul says, Freddie Roach really perfected Ben's defense. So here's a kid who's shitting on one of the greatest trainers in boxing history, Freddie Roach, shitting on a bunch of champion UFC fighters, and let's see, he's got a Porsche 918 Spider. What should I buy with Dana White's $1 million? I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. Nate Diaz gets KO'd in 3. First of all, Nate Diaz would not get knocked out by Jake Paul. And I think he would pretty much. Well, here's somebody who says John, what's his name? John, I don't know. Somebody says Jake Paul will beat Conor McGregor. Yeah, I don't think so. Conor McGregor's not going to fight you. If Jake Paul loses 45 pounds, then fight Conor McGregor. But here's the thing. I love boxing. Big Mike Tyson fan. As a little kid, I watched Mike Tyson. And so I grew up with boxing. However, if Jake Paul were to step into the octagon with, I'll say, I'd give 135ers and I'd give Amanda Nunes. She would knock him out, choke him out. No problem. So how come none of the boxers ever get into the octagon? How come it's always the MMA guys getting into boxing? How about Israel Adesanya? I want to see Jake Paul fight Israel Adesanya. He's an MMA guy, so apparently you can outbox him. He's only had like 117 kickboxing fights, and so there's no takedowns, no wrestling. It's striking. Granted, he has elbows and his kicks and knees. I'm pretty sure he could absolutely destroy Jake Paul in... I think you'd want to have fun with him. Izzy's the kind of guy who would taunt Jake Paul to a point where he wouldn't let him out easy. He would eventually he would knock his head off, but he would fuck with him a little bit, I think, and then knock him out and embarrass the shit out of him. Okay, Yeah, the whole show. I in seeing some videos after and kind of half watching it was like the like a Walmart lo-fi like super lower America event. Like it was cringeworthy, the whole thing. It was like a circus for people, I don't know, fourth grade education at its highest, who were actually into it. I think most of us watched it as a spectacle and kind of giggled, but also because we wanted to see a guy who's never boxed before knock out this little punk. Well, big punk. He's not little, he's big. But it doesn't mean that he can beat a UFC fighter or a Bellator fighter or a one fighter in boxing just because he beat Ben Askren, who just happens to be the one MMA fighter who got by in his entire career never having to use his hands. Anyway, I've rambled long enough. Um, I would love, love, love to see, and quickly, he didn't take any damage in the next 2 months, if he's really got balls, fight someone that's actually your size and that isn't a wrestler. From take on Michael Venom Page. He may only be 170, but he's tall. He'll kill you too. Anyway, Robert Whitaker, who would never fight Jake Paul because he's got class, he's an actual real champion, but he's got great hands. He would destroy him. So that's it. I think the world after the last, I don't know, couple of years, it needs a reality check. If you actually think that this kid is the real deal, I mean, good for him, I guess. If money's is the object and playing the heel or being the heel, I don't think he's playing a part. I think he is a actual piece of shit. Anyway, karma's a bitch, and if he's got real balls, he'll call out Yoel Romero, who's now in Bellator, or perhaps I'm just trying to think of guys that would actually fight him, because most UFC fighters or Bellator fighters or one fighters, or God, even like local mixed martial artists would not have a problem with him. You know, he only has 3.8 million followers on Twitter. I thought he would have more. I wonder what it is on Instagram. Conor McGregor has 40 million on Instagram. Anyway, this ADD moment brought to you by King of the Casuals. And he puts this picture up here. I would love to share it, but I can't. Of Daniel Cormier. It's like a some kind of meme that looks nothing like him. And then he says Woodley can fight J. Leon Love, who's I don't know, one of his guys who says he's signed to Al Heyman, because so much truth comes out of that camp. Al Heyman's actually a good business guy, but give me a break. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough about Jake Paul. It's going to be fun to watch an MMA fighter actually beat Jake Paul in the boxing ring, or if he really has balls, get him in the octagon. I mean, we saw him spar, was it like last year or something, or the year before, and get tapped out. But I want to see him in a striking match. Israel Adesanya, Yoel Romero, Michael Venom Page, Nate Diaz, fine, Jorge Masvidal, Michael Bisping. Bisping and Romero, by the way, are like old enough to be Jake Paul's father, and they'd still kick his ass. Anyway, it goes to show you, $65 million for the fight, maybe. All that money and still a piece of shit. I guess goes to show you, money can't buy you class or intelligence. Maybe you'll get some plastic surgery, though, because that face is not so good. All right, that's enough of me being catty, but sometimes you you're motivated to just kind of rant for a minute. So there it is. That's the king of the casuals for this evening, and Jake Paul. We'll be on Wednesday night, actually, talking about this weekend's Rose Namajunas card. I call it the Rose Namajunas card because that's probably the bigger fight. I mean, you have Usman and Masvidal, and you have Shevchenko fighting Jessica Andrade, but I think Weili Zhang or Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas is gonna probably be the fight of the night. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll see you then. Till then, this is King of the Casuals, and I am the King Casual. Till next time.